I'm Crystal Reed, 34 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my family has always put my sister first, treating me like an afterthought in our suburban Denver home. I poured years into fixing up that place, believing it was our shared legacy amid the Rocky Mountains' harsh winters. But everything shattered when they handed the keys to her and kicked me out with no warning. She sneered, "This house has no place for useless people." I stayed silent, grabbed my keys, and walked away, the door slamming behind me like a final judgment. What they didn't know was that I'd built a secret fortune of $6 million through smart investments and relentless work in IT. When that truth finally surfaced, my phone lit up with 55 missed calls from them, desperate and pleading. But by then, it was too late. Their betrayal had already sealed our family's fate. Drop a comment if you've ever been pushed aside by family favoritism. Smash that like button if you believe in standing up for yourself. And subscribe with notifications on to catch more stories of turning the tables on unfair treatment. You won't want to miss what happened next. Growing up in suburban Denver, the favoritism toward my sister started early and shaped everything in our family home near the Rocky Mountains. My sister Kristen Vaughn, 2 years older, always got the spotlight for her outgoing personality and endless demands. Our parents, Anthony and Maria Reed, celebrated her every milestone like it was a national holiday. For her birthdays, they'd organize massive parties with friends hiking in the nearby trails, complete with catered picnics and expensive gifts like new hiking boots or a portable GPS device for her adventures. My birthdays were afterthoughts, usually a quick family dinner with a store-bought cake from the local supermarket. One year, they forgot entirely until I reminded them at breakfast, and Mom quickly grabbed a generic card from the drugstore on her way home from work. Holidays followed the same pattern. Christmas morning saw Kristen unwrapping high-end electronics or designer outdoor gear, while I received practical items like school supplies or a basic backpack. Dad explained it once as me being the sensible one who didn't need flashy things, but it stung to watch her pile of presents tower over mine. Family photos told the story too. Albums overflowed with shots of Kristen leading group hikes or posing at mountain viewpoints, often with extended relatives cheering her on. I appeared in background group pictures, sometimes cut off at the edges or barely visible. The living room walls displayed framed images of her achievements, like her school play performances or volleyball games. But only one faded photo of me made it there, from a forgotten science fair win. The only person who truly noticed me was my grandmother, Helen Baker, Mom's mother, who visited from downtown Denver a few times a year. She'd pull me aside during her stays and share stories of her own overlooked childhood, squeezing my hand with her calloused fingers from years of gardening. Sometimes the quiet streams run deepest, she'd say, encouraging me to find strength in independence. Helen saw my curiosity about numbers when I was 13, teaching me basic saving concepts using examples from our local economy, like tracking ski resort ticket prices. Under her guidance, I learned to handle things alone rather than seek help that rarely came. While Kristen basked in attention, throwing tantrums for more trail mix or new tents, I built quiet habits like reading about Colorado's tech startups in the library after school. Our personalities clashed from the start. Kristen was loud and social, always organizing neighborhood outings to nearby parks, which our parents praised endlessly. I was analytical and reserved, preferring solo walks along the foothills, observing wildlife patterns that fascinated me. Despite the constant oversight, I found small joys in Denver's natural surroundings, like early morning fog over the mountains before the house woke up. Helen encouraged this resilience, giving me my first $20 to open a savings account at the local credit union, showing me how to track interest in a notebook. When high school achievements came, Kristen's volleyball trophies filled a dedicated shelf, while my math competition certificate vanished from the fridge after a week. one particular memory stands out. During a family trip to Rocky Mountain National Park, Kristen complained about the hike being too hard, so Dad carried her backpack the whole way. I managed my own gear silently, but when we reached the summit, they only photographed her victory pose. Helen later told me privately that true climbers build their own paths. As teenagers, the disparity grew. I started helping with home repairs, like patching the roof after a heavy Colorado snowstorm or repainting the garage walls damaged by hail. Our house, a modest ranch style in the suburbs, needed constant upkeep from the harsh weather. I'd spend weekends climbing ladders and mixing paint, using money from my part-time job at a local cafe to buy supplies. Anthony and Maria appreciated it briefly, but never as much as Kristen's school events. Then came the incident that solidified my resolve. After I finished repainting the living room a fresh beige to protect against mountain dust, Kristen hosted a party and spilled red punch everywhere, ruining the new coat. Instead of scolding her, Mom said it was just an accident and that Kristen needed space for her social life. Dad avoided my gaze, muttering about teamwork, but their favoritism was clear. I cleaned it up alone, feeling invisible yet again. That pattern taught me early on that waiting for recognition was futile. Helen's words echoed as I began saving every penny from chores, dreaming of a life beyond the shadows of our Denver home. As I entered my college years, the independence I'd built in Denver pushed me to pursue IT and marketing at a local university close to home, but far enough to escape daily family dynamics. I chose the major because it combined my analytical mind with emerging tech trends in Colorado's growing startup scene, without parental support. I funded everything myself through multiple jobs, starting with early shifts at a campus coffee shop near the foothills and evening sorting books at the library downtown. My schedule was relentless, often juggling classes on database management with late-night coding sessions for basic apps. Classmates partied on weekends, but I focused on building skills that could lead to real freedom. To cut costs, I shared a cramped off-campus apartment with 3 roommates, bought used textbooks from online forums, and packed simple lunches like sandwiches instead of eating out at trendy Denver cafes. Every spare dollar went into a small investment account Helen had helped me set up before she passed. Meanwhile, Kristen dropped out after just 2 semesters, claiming college stifled her free spirit for outdoor adventures. Anthony and Maria immediately covered her apartment rent in suburban Denver and funded her whims, like photography classes with expensive cameras or guided hiking tours in the Rockies. They'd call her to discuss her latest passion, while my straight-A reports went unnoticed at family dinners. In my junior year, I enrolled in an advanced digital marketing course taught by Dr. Patrick Hayes, a retired tech executive who'd worked on early app developments in Boulder. After acing his challenging midterm on algorithm-driven advertising, he pulled me aside in his office overlooking the campus quad. "You have an instinct for spotting opportunities in data patterns," he said, adjusting his glasses. "It's rare in students your age." Dr. Hayes became my mentor, sharing access to simulation software for market predictions and connecting me to his network in Denver's IT community. Under his guidance, I developed a strategic approach to investing in local startups, focusing on apps that enhanced outdoor experiences, like trail mapping tools popular in Colorado's hiking culture. My first bold move came from a small company creating weather-integrated route planners for mountaineers. I invested my initial $500 from graduation savings into their stock before they gained traction. 6 months later, a major outdoor gear firm acquired them, tripling my return. This win boosted my confidence, validating the methodical risks I'd learned to take. Colleagues in study groups called my frugal habits extreme, but I tracked every expense in a spreadsheet, avoiding unnecessary outings to ski resorts or bars that others frequented. By graduation, I'd secured a position at a boutique IT firm in Denver specializing in app development for tourism. with a modest starting salary but high bonus potential. I rented a tiny studio in a quiet neighborhood, continuing to save over 60% of my income. Weekends meant analyzing tech trends in renewable energy apps rather than joining Kristen's sponsored trips to national parks, which our parents always praised. The contrast sharpened when Kristen called home for loans to buy gear for her fleeting hobbies, like rock climbing equipment. Anthony and Maria never questioned her instability, but I pushed forward alone, volunteering for tough projects at work that built my portfolio. My early career demanded long hours debugging code for user interfaces, often staying late while peers headed to happy hours in Lodo. One project involved optimizing an app for real-time trail updates, which honed my skills in predictive analytics. Dr. Hayes checked in occasionally, offering advice on balancing risks in volatile markets like Colorado's tech boom. These foundations set me up for bigger investments ahead, all while keeping my growing success hidden from the family that had always overlooked me. After graduation, I dove deeper into Denver's tech scene, building on my early investment wins to create a fortune I kept hidden from my family. Over the next decade, my methodical approach to IT startups paid off. I focused on emerging companies developing apps for outdoor safety, like avalanche alert systems tailored for Colorado's unpredictable mountains. One bold bet on a navigation app for backcountry skiers yielded a tenfold return when a major tech firm bought it out, pushing my portfolio past $2 million by age 30. I diversified into renewable energy startups, capitalizing on Denver's green tech boom, and my wealth grew steadily to $6 million. With it, I quietly purchased a modest two-bedroom home in a suburban Denver neighborhood, telling Anthony and Maria it was just a rental to avoid questions. I furnished it simply, with secondhand furniture from local thrift stores, and drove a reliable used sedan, keeping my lifestyle unassuming. My colleagues at the IT firm, where I now led app optimization projects, assumed I was just scraping by like them. Meanwhile, my sister Kristen Vaughn leaned harder on our parents for support. After dropping out of college, she cycled through short-lived jobs at outdoor gear shops and lived off loans for new SUVs or guided climbing trips in the Rockies. Her husband, Justin Vaughn, whom she married at 32, added to the chaos, jobless for months. He lounged at their apartment, pushing Kristen to demand more from Anthony and Maria. One evening, I overheard Kristen on the phone with Mom, whining about needing cash for a new camping trailer. Maria agreed without hesitation, while my own requests for basic home repair funds years earlier had been brushed off. The gap widened when Justin started nudging Kristen to claim our family home early, during a rare visit to their apartment. I caught him whispering about splitting the property now to secure their future. Kristen nodded, her eyes gleaming with entitlement. Our parents' house, the one I'd patched up as a teenager, was still their pride. But they'd begun hinting it would go to her since she needed stability. I stayed silent, refusing to engage, knowing they'd dismiss my contributions. Instead, I focused on my investments, pouring profits into healthcare tech startups addressing mountain rescue logistics. One company, specializing in drone delivery for remote emergencies, skyrocketed after a government contract, adding another $1 million to my portfolio. I tracked every move in a locked spreadsheet, never sharing details with anyone, not even my best friend Alicia Moore. My secrecy wasn't about shame, it was about protecting my peace from a family that saw me as secondary. Kristen's demands escalated. She called Anthony and Maria weekly, asking for advances on bills or gear for her latest hiking obsession. Justin egged her on, suggesting they push for the house title before our parents retired. I learned this during a tense family dinner when Kristen casually mentioned needing space for their growing plans, glancing at me like I was intruding. Dad changed the subject, But Mom's quick agreement with Kristen's complaints made my stomach churn. I started avoiding their calls, limiting contact to brief holiday texts. When Maria visited my so-called rental, she commented it was decent but wondered why I didn't aim higher if my IT job was going well. She had no idea I'd paid cash for the house, something she and Anthony never achieved. My silence wasn't just caution, it was a shield against their expectations. What gave me real purpose was giving back anonymously. I set up a scholarship fund at my university for overlooked students in tech, funding it with $20,000 yearly. I donated to local Denver programs teaching kids coding. Inspired by Helen's lessons, these quiet acts grounded me, far more than any recognition from my family could. But the tension around the house was building, and I sensed Kristen and Justin's plans would soon spark a confrontation I couldn't avoid. The tension with my family finally exploded one weekend when Anthony and Maria called me to the family home in suburban Denver. I arrived expecting a routine visit, but the air felt heavy as I walked into the living room. My sister Kristen Vaughn stood by the fireplace, arms crossed, her husband Justin Vaughn beside her, smirking. Mom and Dad sat stiffly on the couch, avoiding my gaze. Without preamble, Maria announced they'd decided to transfer the house title to Kristen, effective immediately, because she needed a stable home for her growing plans with Justin. I froze, my pulse racing. This was the house I'd helped maintain as a teenager, patching the roof after snowstorms and painting walls to keep it standing. Kristen stepped forward, her voice sharp. "This house has no place for useless people," she said, her words slicing through me. Justin nodded, adding, "It's only fair for us to take it now." Dad muttered about it being best for the family, while Mom just nodded, her lips tight. I wanted to argue, to list every nail I'd hammered, but their faces told me it wouldn't matter. I grabbed my keys, my hands shaking, and walked out. The door slamming behind me with a thud that echoed in my chest. I drove to my own home, the one I'd bought in secret, and threw myself into work to numb the sting. Days later, while skiing on a beginner trail in the Rockies, a rare break to clear my head, I misjudged a turn and twisted my ankle badly. Paramedics rushed me to a Denver hospital, where I paid the bill up front with my card, not thinking much of it. The hospital staff, following protocol, contacted my emergency contacts Anthony, Maria, and Kristen, revealing my account details in the process. By evening, my phone buzzed relentlessly, showing 55 missed calls from them. At first, I thought it was concern. I answered a voicemail from Mom, her voice trembling, asking if I was okay but quickly shifting to questions about my bank balance. Kristen left a message, her tone frantic, demanding to know why I'd hidden such wealth. Justin's call was blunt, asking how much I could spare for their new life in the house I'd been kicked out of. My stomach churned as the truth sank in. They weren't worried about me. They wanted my money. I lay in the hospital bed, ankle braced, staring at the call log. Each notification felt like a fresh betrayal, their voices exposing the greed I'd always suspected but hoped wasn't true. Alicia Moore, my best friend, stopped by with coffee, her face grim as I played her the messages. "They're circling like vultures," she said, shaking her head. I nodded, my jaw tight, realizing I'd been naive to think family ties meant loyalty. The next day, discharged with a crutch, I checked my phone again. More calls, Kristen's voice now laced with anger, accusing me of hoarding wealth while she struggled. Justin left another message, hinting at legal steps to claim a share, saying I owed them for living in their house all those years. Anthony and Maria's messages pleaded for understanding, claiming they'd only given the house to Kristen to help her settle. But their words rang hollow after years of overlooking my efforts. I didn't return their calls. Instead, I sat in my quiet living room, the one I'd built without their help, and let the reality settle. They'd cast me out, labeled me useless, and now saw me as a bank to tap. The 55 missed calls weren't about family. They were about what they thought they could take from me. Back at home, I faced their calls, my phone still buzzing from the 55 missed notifications after the hospital revealed my wealth. I braced myself and answered the first call from Kristen Vaughn, my sister, her voice dripping with accusation. "You've been sitting on $6 million while I've been scraping by," she snapped, her words sharp over the line. "How could you hide that from us?" I stayed calm, gripping my coffee mug, and replied that I'd earned every cent through years of work, not handouts. She scoffed, calling me selfish, insisting I owed her for all the years I lived in our parents' house. The next call came from Justin Vaughn, her husband, his tone cold and calculated. "We're talking to a lawyer about splitting the family assets," he said, citing Colorado's inheritance laws. "You can't just keep that money to yourself." His audacity made my jaw tighten. I'd patched that house with my own savings as a teenager, yet he acted like I was the intruder. I told him to do what he thought was right, but I wasn't giving in. He hung up, muttering about seeing me in court. Anthony and Maria, my parents, called next. Their voices softer but laced with desperation. "We're drowning in debt." "Crystal," Mom pleaded, mentioning the second mortgage they'd taken to fund Kristen's endless expenses. "Can't you help us keep the house?" Dad chimed in, saying it was for family unity. But their words felt like another dismissal of my years of effort. I took a deep breath, my resolve firm, and laid out the truth. "For years, you celebrated Kristen's every whim, her parties, her trips while I painted walls and fixed leaks to keep that house standing. You called me useless and gave it to her. I'm done being your fallback." Kristen's next message was a rant, accusing me of betraying the family by hoarding wealth. "You could have saved us," she yelled, her voice cracking with fury. Justin followed, pushing harder about legal action, claiming my contributions to the house didn't matter since it was their property now. I hung up mid-sentence, my hands trembling but my mind clear. Alicia Moore, my best friend, sat with me as I played the messages, her eyes narrowing. "They're trying to guilt you into submission," she said, tossing her phone aside. "Don't let them." Weeks later, the fallout began. Anthony and Maria couldn't keep up with their mortgage payments without my help, and the bank foreclosed on the family home, a common fate in Denver's volatile market. The ranch-style house I'd once repaired was auctioned off, leaving them in a cramped rental apartment on the city's edge. Kristen and Justin's marriage unraveled under the financial strain. Arguments over money escalated, and Justin walked out, leaving her alone in a leased condo she could barely afford. She took a part-time job at a retail store, a far cry from her carefree hiking days. I gathered receipts from my teenage repair work, readying them for any legal challenge. Colorado's probate laws were clear without a will. Assets split evenly, but my documented contributions could sway a judge. Their threats of a lawsuit fizzled when Justin's lawyer backed off, citing weak evidence. My parents left one final voicemail, begging for reconciliation, but it was too late. Their favoritism had built a wall I no longer wanted to climb. I deleted the message, feeling the weight of their betrayal lift, replaced by a quiet strength I'd earned on my own. After their calls stopped, I made my choice. I blocked Anthony, Maria, Kristen, and Justin's numbers, severing ties with the family that had cast me out of our Denver home. My life in suburban Denver became my own, built on the foundation of my $6 million fortune and the independence I'd earned. I filled my days with hikes along the Rocky Mountain trails, joining a local group led by my friend Alicia Moore, who'd stood by me through the chaos. We'd trek up Lookout Mountain, the crisp air clearing my mind as I left the past behind. My home, The one I'd bought in secret became a sanctuary. I added a small garden out back, planting wildflowers native to Colorado, and lined my shelves with books on tech innovation. Jamie Gonzalez, my neighbor, often dropped by with homemade tamales, sharing stories of her own family struggles. Their support reminded me I wasn't alone. Even without blood ties, my work at the IT firm thrived, landing contracts to optimize apps for outdoor tourism, each project a step toward a future I controlled. Meanwhile, my family's world unraveled further. Anthony and Maria, now in a cramped rental after the foreclosure, faced a community that turned cold. Neighbors who once waved now avoided them, whispering about their favoritism and the lost house. Kristen, left by Justin after their marriage collapsed, struggled to make ends meet with a part-time retail job at a Denver mall. She'd call Alicia sometimes, fishing for updates, but I'd instructed her to keep my life private. Their attempt to sue for a share of my wealth fell apart. I'd kept detailed records of my contributions to the family home receipts for roof repairs, paint, and supplies from my teenage years, in Colorado's probate court, where assets split evenly without a will. My evidence proved I'd invested more than anyone. The judge dismissed their case, citing no legal grounds, leaving them with mounting legal fees they couldn't pay. One morning, while sipping coffee on my porch, Alicia showed me a text from Kristen, claiming she was sorry and wanted to reconnect. I shook my head, knowing her apologies came from desperation, not change. Jamie, overhearing, nodded in agreement, saying family doesn't get a pass for betrayal. I sent no reply, choosing silence over reopening old wounds. My parents tried one last letter, mailed to my office, pleading for a meeting to mend things. I read it once, then shredded it, feeling no guilt. My new life took shape in Denver's vibrant community. I joined a coding workshop for local teens, mentoring kids who reminded me of my younger self, overlooked but full of potential. I expanded my scholarship fund, now supporting 10 students a year, giving them tools to build their own paths. On weekends, I'd hike with Alicia and Jamie, sharing laughs over trail mix and stories of resilience. The lesson was clear: favoritism tears families apart, leaving only regret for those who choose it. Anthony and Maria lived isolated, their legacy reduced to a rented apartment. Kristen's carefree days ended in a grind she wasn't prepared for. Their choices cost them everything: house, relationships, respect. For me, cutting ties wasn't about anger, it was about claiming my worth. Self-reliance gave me freedom, a home filled with purpose, and a life no one could take away. If you've ever had to walk away from toxic family, know this: your value isn't in their approval, but in the life you build. Stand tall, set boundaries, and choose yourself. That's the truest wealth there is.